You're tuned in to today's Live at 5. Before we jump into today's episode, I just want to remind you that this show is only possible because of the continued support of amazing people like you. You can continue to support us by subscribing to this YouTube channel, sharing an episode with a friend, or signing up to our Patreon page via the link in the description below. From there, you'll be able to access some exclusive bonus content and dive deeper into the world of Live at 5. Now, without any further ado, let's get right into today's show. We hope you enjoy. to Live at 5. Sorry we were a little late today, but we're just getting used to being back in our studio space. And we're, of course, joined by Joe Webb on the piano. Salute. And Conor Chaplin on the bass. Nice to see you. And we know that everyone's tuning in today because they're Conor's fans, so we want to thank iloveconorchaplin.com for endorsing this program. And if you haven't been to the site, do be sure to visit it soon after the broadcast. The Conor Fan Club. I'm a member. That was called 3-in-1, and it's written by the great Thad Jones. And we're going to move on with a favorite of mine and of Joe's as well. Book, and this is called Moten Swing. You want to bring it in?
Yeah.
1, 2. That's Conor Chaplin on the bass. And Joe Webb on the piano. That was Benny Moten's Moten Swing. And that's based on an older song that we try not to sing in my household. It's called "You're Driving Me Crazy." 60 days. 60 days.
Drive you crazy.
It could. Or you could just write a song about it. No, but all jokes aside, it's really great to be here again. And if you caught the broadcast on Monday as well, it's just a blast to be doing different stuff in this space and be back playing in the same room again safely. We have a special guest today who's not in the room, and this is the wonderful thing about modern technology. And he is actually one of the, as people who've seen Smitty's before will know that I don't always play this woodwind. Sometimes I play the clarinet, black flute with case. And the guest that we have today is someone who inspired me to pick up the clarinet in jazz music. Watching videos of him 10 years ago, I kind of thought, wow, this is how I'd like to sound if I ever could, play jazz on the clarinet. So it's going to be fun to and reminisce a little bit. We're going to just let the rhythm section play the rhythm section. All two of them play one more tune, and then we're going to get Evan on from New Orleans. But you're listening to Live at 5, and we are live, so we'll see you with Evan Christopher shortly. This is Darn That Dream. That's Darn That Dream. Joe Webb on the piano, Conor Chaplin on the bass. And we'd like to invite our special guest, whom I can envision in front of me, almost like he was there. Evan, are you in the country? Is he there? Not yet. He's just flying in. Well, maybe we'll play the video then. This is one of the first videos that I saw of Evan playing at a London venue called the Cucumber, and he's playing with Nice Guy Hall of Famer Dave Blankhorn, Dave Kelby, Sebastian Girardot, and this video, when I saw it about 10 years ago, I was living in Montreal. You know, I hadn't played jazz on the clarinet. I was playing jazz on saxophone. Oh, there he is. Hey. Well, I'll just tell you about the video anyway. I can see him now. Yeah, I saw this video about 10 years ago, and I had never thought that I could play jazz on the clarinet because I only was exposed to people like Artie Shaw and Benny Goodman, who are the great swing era clarinet players. But I never really wanted to sound like that. And then I heard Evan play, and it opened a whole world to me of a different school of clarinet playing, which I've subsequently fallen in love with, which is the New Orleans school, the other schools of people that aren't Benny Goodman and Artie Shaw. So Evan, if you're he's setting up his headset. You there?
I'm here.
This is Evan Christopher, all the way from New Orleans, Louisiana.
Yeah, it's a beautiful day here.
Yeah,
it is. It turned really nice. Yeah.
Amazing. How you doing?
So, man, I'm fine, but you can't blame me for all your problems there. I don't appreciate that at all.
I blame you for my clarinet disease.
You can't blame me for that.
So you've been. Y'all
sound wonderful, by the way.
Oh, thanks, man. He says you all sound wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
And yeah, so just to work backwards, I mean, I want to talk a little bit about what you're doing right now with David Torkanowski and what it's like in New Orleans right now, and not too much about the doom and gloom stuff, but just like you're doing concerts online once a week.
I mean,
right?
The doom and gloom is what it is, right? We all have to recalibrate, and the focus for us for the live streams that we've been working on with me and my partner Dave Torkanowski on piano is really the fundamentally we're just trying to keep people connected. So you can we don't have to talk about the doom and gloom, but the reality is that the city is finally kind of on track to see a flatter curve and reduced numbers of hospitalizations. And we are just entering phase 1 of opening the city back up. And then there's a lot of creative ways that's going to be happening, and we're just kind of following our own city's rhythm and needs, the way we've been doing it for 300 years. So that's the good news. For the live streams, like I say, the goal has been to figure out what is a way to present the music in a virtual setting that's going to give people the most positive sense of connection to not only to the city but to each other, and to give them some ideas and inspiration to make sure that they're doing the same in their own communities. Sure. Because it's going to be a while before they get to come back here necessarily, and I, without being too negative, this is a city that's a little over dependent on 18 million annual visitors. So a lot of the recalibration process is just to kind of figure out how to make up for that shortfall. So there's the connection side of it, and then there's the side of it where we still have to just figure out how to use this new environment, the virtual environment, to actually make a living.
An amazing video of you and David. David's playing a white baby grand, on the back of a trailer that's being, the wheeled through the streets of the Garden District or something. And,
that's right.
That's really
we
special.
made a block party.
That's wonderful.
we've done I think five Sundays now. We sat out for a while, waiting to see, letting the novelty wear off, letting the busters train people how to use PayPal, and then we came in and tried to kind of up the game, up the quality for audio as well as video. And we've done some creative things. We've partnered with our one of our local listening rooms, Snug Harbor, raised some money for them so they could have some streaming infrastructure. We're doing a couple other fundraisers for venues in other parts of the country. Last week, we were a part of Jazz at Lincoln Center's Dizzy's Jazz from Home series. And the week before that's the one you saw, we're on Mother's Day. We actually had a block party, and it was awesome. Now the kids in the neighborhood used sidewalk chalk to mark off 10-foot spaces where people could sit and still be the right distance. And that was on the block. And the piano on a truck, he was a buddy of ours. That's sort of his kind of a little side business. And we put a better piano on the truck for the broadcast, parked it under a magnolia tree, used a Wi-Fi extender from the house across the street to make sure that we had enough signal to do the broadcast. And I sat on a chair on top of a table on the other side of the truck, so that technically we could have been seen together, but we've been using the split shot just to kind of.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just it's so much in the image of the city, and it's also a great thing to be bringing people from a distance now. So it was, to me, to see that it's kind of a triple threat, because I love hearing you play, but it's cool to see people thinking creatively in this environment.
Indeed, it really is. And I would say what you guys have been doing is equally inspirational in that way.
Thanks, man.
You guys have your own community to try to hold together, and your own battles to fight. One of the advantages that New Orleans has is that we have a long history of music being a part of the fabric of social life. Nothing important doesn't happen here without live music. So we have that advantage. Whereas let's take a town like New York. I think their musicians will struggle more because they haven't. They've let people off the hook for a long time, and it's not as established.
I want to ask you about that. I want to ask you about a little bit of your roots and how you found your way to New Orleans, and then you've been split between New Orleans and New York for kind of the past 3-4 years.
Yeah, since our daughter was born. That's right.
Yeah.
So I guess so it's been a little more now than 4 years, because she'll be 4 in July. What it looked like is me being in Southern California, kind of doing what you guys are doing, just playing a lot of jobs and kind of developing a love for the music and a love for the clarinet, and then having a tour that brought me to New Orleans, and then discovering that there were a lot of guys my age that had the same passion and were playing the traditional music of New Orleans. Even more than I was. I would say that there was a difference. I would say I was more interested in traditional jazz, I guess, if that makes sense.
What do you mean by that?
And I actually
like an artist name.
I didn't know that much about New Orleans music. I didn't know that much about the New Orleans artists. I knew about Louis Armstrong, but I knew about the Louis Armstrong who had already left New Orleans. I knew about Jello Morton after he had already left New Orleans. I knew about Duke Ellington's early bands, playing a lot like King Oliver, but I didn't really know much about what the music was in New Orleans. I came late to the party for the revival style that George Lewis embodied. That didn't interest me as much when I was first starting. So even though these are New Orleans artists I'm mentioning, this is the music that they were playing once they had already left New Orleans, and it was for a different audience and a different dance, different style of popular dancing, and it wasn't as the continuity with what they were doing in the 20s to what jazz became later was not the same as the continuity of what musicians were doing in New Orleans in the 20s to what musicians are doing now.
Well, now you explained that to me one time. I remember, we were talking about this was one of the times that we hung out in London a while ago, and I was asking you about some things, the 3 front line New Orleans jazz band, and you said, well, actually, that wasn't a thing at all. You know, that there was a clarinet, but then there was a violin. There wasn't even a trumpet in the original.
The best society bands had well, they had trumpets. So I mean, if you think about the traditional musics of all places that kind of are related to the diaspora, you've got these bands that are coming out of European instrumentation ensembles. The military brass band, primarily here in New Orleans, was very, very important. But the dance groups, the Cuban danzón orchestras, the choro orchestras of Brazil at the turn of the last century, and the ragtime ensembles in the United States, they all had flutes and mid-horn brass parts. They had stringed instruments. And the popular bands, they didn't really drop the violin got dropped after the success of the original Dixieland Jazz Band in New York. And once the success of those white boys got back to town, all the New Orleans bands fired their violin players. I mean, it wasn't exactly like that, but that feedback loop is important about how the music leaves New Orleans, changes where it is, and Chicago, New York for the recording industry as well as the popular dance, and then gets back to New Orleans and affects and changes the way band leaders like Kid Ory
Exactly right. Yeah,
change
right.
their bands and things.
So when did so you fell in love with New Orleans when you came there on tour, and then you discovered that I assume you probably got. I mean, when did you move there?
Technically, technically, my first visit to New Orleans was 1994.
Wow.
So about a little over 25 years ago. I said, "Oh, I'm quitting the band. I'm going to move here." And I didn't fall in love with New Orleans until I lived there for a while and started to understand how the music was connected to daily life, and how families were connected through the music, and how neighborhoods were connected, and the history of what that was. When I first got there, I was just interested in the music. I grew to have an interest in New Orleans as I started putting those two things together. And that's what I'm saying is a little bit of an advantage of New Orleans that I think a lot of places don't have, is that they're having to simultaneously make themselves relevant in a community and make themselves visible at the same time. Whereas right now, our problem is visibility, but the relevance is at least a little bit more of a given.
So you still feel that is an entity in New Orleans, that this, and I assume you're talking about jazz, but I know that there are other ethnic, New Orleans music.
Every type of New Orleans music, has a few things in common to me, Giacomo, and one of them is that fundamentally their relationship to the people is that the music embodies elements that are fundamentally about trying to deal with very difficult situations.
Right.
Meaning everything that we think of as, so if you think of New Orleans as an ethnic music, all the things that make New Orleans music what it is, and the reason you can say, oh, that's New Orleans music, the strategies of the rhythms that it uses, the strategies of the way that musicians interact with each other, the strategies of the blues. If you think of the blues not as a style of music or singing, but actually as a strategy, and about it, basically it was a form of musical communication that had certain linguistic elements or certain things in the vocabulary of it that go back to Africa, then you start to appreciate that the elements of the music that we all are loving and digging, that eventually became marketed and known and thought of as jazz, we actually can think about the purpose of those stylistic elements, or those style specific elements. And the purpose was to keep people together as a community, to communicate, to express feelings that were related to a deep ambivalence about their personal situations. They're talking about going all the way up through the time of slavery into the now. I mean, I'm afraid to, not to get all the I don't want to get negative, but I mean, the fact of the matter is that this city has the musical thread is continuous because there's also been a thread of uh, very deep social disenfranchisement of of um, of a certain part of the community.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, this whole period is going very well for the people who have a vested interest in systemic inequality.
Now, when you say period, you mean the post. You're referring to kind of the post Katrina era, right?
Right now, I'm talking about the coronial era.
The coronial era. Oh, okay, right.
And I think post 2005, when the levees failed, I think that was a rehearsal for this. We already seen what will happen if we don't control the narrative ourselves. We already seen what happened from in between 2005 when the federal levees failed that flooded the city of New Orleans, and now we have very good evidence and know exactly how the city is going to rebuild itself if we don't control the narrative. And I say we, I mean the culture bearers, the artists, the people who live here. We have a great opportunity. We have a great opportunity to do a better job of controlling the narrative, and quantity is not the same as quality.
Yeah.
I don't think we need to be racing back to try to have 18 million people coming here every year.
Well, now that's an interesting thing, and I think that I want to highlight that for people who are listening that haven't been to New Orleans, that it's a very singular place in terms of visiting the United States, and a lot of people who are in the UK will have visited New York City, which feels really close compared to New Orleans. When I go to New Orleans, I feel like I'm in a different world. And
exactly
the
how I thought of it when I first visited. Yeah.
Really? Okay, right. So
yeah, I woke up on a bus.
Wow.
I woke up on a tour bus and I looked out the window and it reminded me of a Dr. Seuss book, or you ever remember the Warner Brothers cartoon Porky in Wacky Land, where he's in search of the dodo bird, and it's just all this surrealist art references. Yeah,
right.
It's exactly how
it was that. Yeah, and I mean that's that great Tennessee Williams quote, isn't it? Where there are three cities in America: New York, Chicago, and New Orleans. Everywhere else is Cleveland. which I love.
Ohio always gets the brunt of those jokes.
It always does, doesn't it? They're nice people. We don't have anything against Ohio on this program, but it's important to highlight this thing that Evan is saying, where the culture of the neighborhoods and the people who come from this city are very separate from the rest of the United States because of the inherent history of the place, the musical history, the influx of tourism, and the European influence, frankly, right? I mean, it's like this huge blend of stuff.
We still have laws that are coming out of Napoleonic Code. I mean, wow. Some are silly and some are just are what they are. But I mean, yeah, there's the permissiveness that actually facilitated the development of these traditions that we all love, whether they're food traditions, dancing traditions, music traditions, the permissiveness of the French, even more than the Spanish, and throw in that just the way that the architecture developed because of the geography of the city. You have a very unique environment visually, the feeling of it, the history of it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, Evan, it's such a pleasure to get to talk to you a little bit. Do you think we could try?
Congratulations, you guys, for what you're doing. Yeah, let's try to play some music.
Thanks, man. Yeah. Joe and Conor, we'd like to invite you back to the sound stage for some blues in F. And now for you listening at home, this is more difficult for Evan than it is for him, because he's 3,000 miles away from us. So, and give him credit for being willing to try it out, because it's tough. But Evan, thank you so much, man.
We're gonna figure it out.
We're gonna do it.
We're gonna figure it out.
All right. So this is some blues in F. 1,
Okay.
2, 1, 2, 3. One more. All right, here we go. Yeah, man. Evan Christopher, man, you're a legend. It's great to see you.
Great to see you guys. I can't wait to come back when we can all be together, in person.
You said it.
And
can't wait to, man. We got to get you down to Smitty's.
I would love to do it. I'm sorry we didn't make it happen last time. Where were we the last time, though?
We were at Hoxton Hall.
Hoxton Hall.
That was a fun one.
Yeah, that was
cool,
kicks. But you guys take good care of yourselves. I know we're not really out of the woods yet, but just look after yourselves and be patient and try to use your music to help everybody else stay cooled out.
Thanks, man. You too.
Thank you.
We'll talk to you soon.
Great. See you Sunday.
You bet. Yes. So that's Evan Christopher, and of course you're listening to Live at 5. We are going to put the link to Evan's live streams with David Torkanowski all the way in New Orleans. We're going to put that in the description below, and you can check out that, our Patreon page, and a link to the Kansas Smitty's membership in the text below. We're going to play some more music now. What do we got? We're going to play It's You or No One. That was It's You or No One. Listening to Joe Webb on the piano and Conor Chaplin on the bass. And we're going to tell you, Darce, what's our record of the day is one that I found last night. I was talking to our drummer in Smitty's, Will Cleesby, and he was saying he was listening to Elvin Jones for inspiration. And I just thought about all the people that Elvin Jones must have played with apart from John Coltrane. And I just had a look through his discography and found a trio album with him and Earl Hines. No way. So Earl Hines, who is Father Hines, who's the father of jazz piano in a lot of ways, even though Jelly Roll Morton would contest that, made a trio record with Elvin Jones. And it's...
Richard Davis.
Is it right here? It's a little down. It's there.
Oh, yeah.
Down a bit.
It's sitting in that chair.
It's sitting in the chair. So we're gonna pop a couple of tracks from that into our Live at 5 playlist. Yeah, thank you so much for tuning in today. And it's a real pleasure to be here again playing live music for you. We'll be back on Friday playing some more music from here. And Darce, what are we doing on Saturday?
So on Saturday, we will be dropping on Friday night, we should say that we'll be playing a 45-minute set, and we'll also be recording a second set that we'll be dropping exclusively for our Patreon subscribers in our Patreon channel. So if you're interested in getting a second set of live music every week, go on to our Patreon, check out what that's all about, and our Patreon subscribers that are watching right now, you'll get a little gift on Saturday, which is an extra set of music to enjoy.
Great. So we're going to play you out with one of my favorite tunes from John Kirby and Maxine Sullivan. And they weren't the first people to record this, but it's definitely one of my favorite versions. And it's aptly called The Hour of Parting. So you got that? We good with that? Cool. And we'll see you on Friday live at 5. Thank you so much for tuning in. They're all screaming at home. Yeah, I know. It's just like... I know that in every household, on every street, in every corner of the world, all you can hear is... Because jazz. Because mayonnaise. Thanks again for listening to Live at 5. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay up to date with every episode. You can also click on the link in the description below to sign up to our Patreon and find out where you can sign up for Kansas Smitty's memberships, as well as purchase records and merch. Enjoy your evening, and we'll see you tomorrow, Live at 5.